Get started in the cultural change process for ecotourism. The first step is analysis and objective setting and strategic planning. Boris Strong, the first executive director of the UN Environment Program, once said, quote, "We need what I have often called an ecological approach to the management of these resources, and we do not have that now. We have the inertia of past habits, unsustainable habits." In getting started, we want to set a baseline analysis for performance, programmatic, and cultural data. The performance data is the hard data that we can measure. The programmatic data is how many people are participating in our programs and how satisfied are they in that participation. And the third is the cultural data to look at the norms. Are they becoming more supportive? Is our organization becoming more supportive for the vision that we're trying to achieve? Performance analysis. Each ecotourism business will develop its own performance goals and objectives according to its unique situation. If the ecotourism lodge or tour operation is part of an existing certification program, this could form the core of performance goals and objectives. The Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria for Hotels and Tour Operators, GSTC, provides minimum standards for an ecotourism business seeking to meet minimum global standards. In developing performance goals and objectives, the key is that they be meaningful to the overall mission of the business or organization, that they be clear, and that they be measurable. It is also helpful to have targets to meet along the way in obtaining the longer range goals. For example, if the long range goal is to become a net carbon zero business, then targets might be developed such as reduce net carbon emissions 25% in the first 2 years, 50% in the next 5 years, 75% in 10 years, etc. While there are many areas to consider in developing tailor-made goals and objectives for each ecotourism operation, a number of them have been identified in the Blue Community Program. While the Blue Community Program was developed for tourism in general with a specific emphasis on coastal habitat and marine environments, most, if not all, the 12 Blue Community strategies apply to ecotourism as well. These 12 areas can form goals and objectives that might be developed to go beyond the GSTC criteria, and they include improve building design, build more sustainably and for disaster reduction, promote mass transportation to reduce carbon emissions, reduce energy use, water conservation, improve waste management, reduce the use of plastic, promote local organic or hydroponic food, promote sustainable seafood, protect habitat and cultural heritage, support clean marina initiatives, education for guests, for employees, and the community at large, and planning, policy, and management for sustainability. Once an ecotourism program is underway, it is important to track the program with ongoing evaluations. Programmatic evaluation includes questions such as how many people are participating in the programs, what are their satisfaction levels, and what are the resulting commitments to the success of the program. A typical evaluation question might include how well the program was received, or how helpful the program was, or how hopeful participants are for the change occurring. Cultural analysis or evaluation measures how the culture is changing. This includes how much more supportive the culture might be from the baseline data of organizational support, the change in the influence of negative norms, and changes in organizational programs and policy in the culture. Some of the areas in the analysis might include How supportive is the culture? What are the norms, both positive and negative, that are helping or hindering the progress? How does policy influence progress? What are the written objectives? Do they align with the goals we're trying to achieve? Have there been previous change programs? Which ones were successful? Which ones were not? And why? Do the demographics of the employees and their families help or hinder the process or need to have mitigations? And what is in place for leadership development to have ongoing, sustained change? Environmental management systems and information and communication systems. Environmental management systems begin with the development of sound environmental policy, followed by planning, corrective action, management review, and implementation and operation. To begin with, let's ask the basic question: what is an environmental management system, or EMS? An EMS helps ecotourism businesses and organizations to evaluate, manage, and reduce their environmental impacts by creating a system to integrate environmental management into business operations. A typical EMS includes the following components: a preliminary environmental review, the development of environmental policy, the setting of goals, objectives, and targets, implementing the EMS through a company environmental program, establishing EMS procedures, establishing environment performance monitoring and data collection, internal environment communication delegation and training, environment-related communication to both guests and visitors, conducting an EMS audit, review of objectives and targets for continual improvement, and the reporting back of the results to employees, customers, stakeholders, and the larger public. There are many benefits of an ecotourism EMS. An EMS enables ecotourism businesses to comply with and/or exceed laws and regulations. Lowers costs by reducing resource use, improving efficiency, reducing waste, and avoiding non-compliance penalties. Helps create a healthier and safer environment for both employees and guests. It shows the guests the commitment to being a greener ecotourism business. It helps better position businesses for obtaining bank loans. And it demonstrates corporate social responsibility to customers, stakeholders, and the larger community. There are generally 4 phases of EMS development. Phase 1, environmental responsibility. Phase 2, environment policy. Phase 3, implementing the EMS. And Phase 4, the EMS audit. James Cash Penney once said, "The art of effective listening is essential to clear communication, and clear communication is necessary to management success." We'll now take a look at environmental management systems and information and communication systems that are necessary for their success. Phase 1 is about environment responsibility. As with most tasks in a business, responsibility has to be assigned to someone to provide accountability that the EMS is completed. Responsibility for an EMS can be assigned to an individual or a team. Some ecotourism businesses appoint an environmental coordinator who in turn is supported by an environment management team. Team members ideally have the following qualities: an appreciation of the importance of an EMS, an understanding of the laws and regulations related to the EMS and the consequences for noncompliance, the ability to appreciate the technicalities of EMS so that priority actions can be taken, the ability to gather the necessary information, conduct interviews when necessary, analyze data, and provide progress reports. And lastly, the ability to communicate well with the rest of the organization. Phase 2, environment policy. When the data gathered in Phase 1 is analyzed, it is then compiled into an environment status report. The report generally includes the following types of topics: the sustainability features of the building, the mass transit alternatives available, the energy usage, the amount of water used and its cost, the volumes and charges of waste disposal, the percentage of food that is locally sourced, the percentage of seafood that is sustainably caught, an inventory of all materials purchased, the levels of compliance with regulations, the existing environment improvement programs, the existing habitat and ecosystem protection programs, clean marina initiatives if applicable, the management and operation procedures that could facilitate or obstruct EMS implementation, the local initiatives that could facilitate the implementation, the employee interest, the potential guest and visitor response to an EMS program, and recommendations on EMS objectives and targets. Compliance. Once the information is compiled and analyzed, it's important to conduct a full review to verify that the business is complying with all existing laws and regulations. The environmental status report needs to include those areas where the business is not in compliance or in danger of falling out of compliance. It is also useful to review any current proposed legislations, since the EMS wants to not just meet, but in most cases exceed the minimal requirements. A key step in beginning your environmental management system is establishing the environmental policy. The environmental policy is a public statement of the business or organization's commitment and responsibility. It declares how the business is responding to various environmental challenges, provides a framework for the goals, objectives, and targets, and validates the EMS. The policy is developed on the basis of the findings of the Environment Status Review and the objectives and targets established. It is important that the environmental policy have top management support with accountability. It is recommended that the environmental policy state the rationale for the policy and include a clear commitment to the continuous improvement, compliance with existing laws and regulations, and maintaining good community relations. In your reading assignments, I have provided several case studies that you can look at to get ideas how to formulate and establish your own environmental policy. The case studies include the Walt Disney Company, the South Lodge Hotel in West Sussex, UK, the Bryn Smokehouse in Clare, Ireland, and Los Rios in Costa Rica. We'll take a look briefly at the Walt Disney Company and how they set their policy. Based on the analysis, targets and objectives need to be set for each of the areas of the environmental management system. For example, The following is adapted from the Walt Disney Company, who established new environmental goals in 2008, using 2006 as their baseline data. The Walt Disney Company long-term goals included zero net direct greenhouse gas emissions, reduction of indirect greenhouse gases from electric consumption, sending zero waste to landfill, no new development unless it can be shown there will be a net positive impact on ecosystems, minimizing water use, minimizing product footprint, informing, empowering, and activating employees, business patterns, and consumers to take positive action for the environment. After the Walt Disney Company set their long-term goals, they established midterm targets for waste. In the next 5 years, decrease tons of solid waste to landfill by 50% of the baseline level. In the next 5 years, increase the percentage of purchases that include post-consumer recycled material. In the area of climate and energy, in the next 4 years, achieve 50% of goal of zero net direct greenhouse gas emissions through a combination of reductions, efficiencies, and offsets. In the next 5 years, reduce electricity consumption by 10% compared to the baseline in existing assets. Develop a plan to aggressively pursue renewable sources of electricity to reduce emissions from electricity. And in the area of ecosystems, in the next 2 years, develop and implement an integrated approach to design, engineering, and habitat protection for all new construction projects, and to increase the level of support for the Disney Worldwide Conservation Fund each year for the next 5 years. Implementing the EMS program. A good management program is needed to successfully implement the environmental management system. An environmental management program is in effect the action plan to implement the EMS. The management plan usually includes the following for each component of the EMS: the objectives and targets, the actions to be taken, the budget, the deadlines, and the departments concerned with the implementation component. S for ecotourism usually consists of the following action areas: building improvements for both sustainability and disaster reduction, improvements to encourage mass transportation and/or less use of the automobile, lowering energy consumption, reducing waste output, reducing the use of plastic, sourcing local organic and/or hydroponic food, sourcing sustainable seafood, protecting coastal and environmental habitat, clean marina initiatives, lowering emissions, including ozone depleting substances, improving the indoor environment, lowering noise, internal communication, delegation, and training, environment and sustainability education to guests, and monitoring and documenting the progress. For each of the action areas, the following management options can be considered. 1. What procedural or process changes might be needed for improvement? 2. What technology could be used to better facilitate environment management? 3. What changes will increase efficiency? 4. What improvements will require substantial investment? And 5. Will better training address some of the issues? There are many strategies that can be utilized to implement an environmental management system. The following are some of the common ones that other businesses have utilized. Building management, which includes indoor air quality, ozone-depleting substances, fire extinguishers, and noise management. Mass transportation, encouraging the use of mass transit to and from airports to the resort. Using hybrid or electric vehicles for the resort transportation. Providing pedestrian and bike trail alternatives. Providing incentives for guests with hybrid or electric vehicles. Energy. This includes several strategies, including but not limited to energy conservation, maintenance and good housekeeping energy options, automatic load shedding, controls for heating hot water, Energy Star or equivalent labels, insulated windows, controlled ventilation, efficient energy lighting systems, coverings and coatings, heat recovery, building energy management, and renewable energy options. Waste management. This begins with the refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse unnecessary packaging and other waste that you don't need to receive in the first place, reduce the amount of waste you generate, reuse what waste you can, and recycle the remainder if you can. This area also includes hazardous waste, the separation of waste, and the purchasing of environmental friendly products within the supply chain. Education. This area includes the internal environment-related education to the employees, along with the delegation and training of the staff as well. It also includes communicating the environmental performance, how you're doing. It includes guest communication and communication to build the reputation of the company. Management for the EMS. Monitoring environmental performance. The monitoring and documentation enables businesses to assess whether targets and objectives are being met, to identify plans that are not being successfully implemented, and to identify the corrective and preventive actions needed to improve performance. Once the program has been implemented, there comes the time for Phase 4, the Environmental Management System Audit. An EMS audit is necessary to verify the effectiveness of the environmental programs, to ensure that environmental objectives and targets are being met, and to evaluate how the EMS should be modified and expanded in the context of changing laws and industry standards. Typical questions you'll want to ask in the EMS audit include, is the environmental management system complete? Have you included everything? Have the objectives and targets been set? Does the EMS cover all your business activities? Is information on environmental performance communicated to the employees? Are there adequate procedures for corrective actions in place? Are environment practices integrated into the daily operations? Is environmental performance being monitored and documented? Is there a commitment to continued improvement? Is the EMS well implemented? Is the EMS sufficient to achieve the objectives and targets that you have set? 4 phases of the process, an effective information and communication system will be needed. So early in the process, it is important to analyze how information and communication systems are operating within the business. This includes the information and communication within the organization to the guest and to the larger public. The communication of expected behavior, new norms, results of the MS process, and specific environmental messages related to the ecotourism operations are all examples of types of communication that are important to the success of the business. Communication systems can always be improved. In fact, that is an ongoing process. Some of the typical questions to assist in getting started include: what kind of things in the EMS are reported regularly and in detail? In what EMS area is there the most information flow? Which area is there the least? Who gets the EMS information provided by the EMS team? Who does not get the information? Will anyone ever know when something happens to improve the EMS situation? If so, how? How will the EMS results be presented? Will they be noticed? Is it a norm for people, including leadership, to freely communicate with members of the group at all levels? Do people sometimes hold back EMS information from others in order to maintain their own positions? Is it a norm for people to be political or diplomatic in EMS information sharing rather than communicate and share openly? Do mixed messages sometimes cause confusion? Do people seem to need more information than they have in order to do a good job to achieve the goals of the EMS? Is it a norm for people to practice two-way communication, or do we have a lot of one-way communication? Is it the norm for people to seek out the ideas and opinions of others? And is the business or organization emphasizing the things that need emphasizing in the information and communication systems? We now come to the implementation of the MS. Environmental management systems implementation includes individual actions, group actions, organizational actions, and leadership development. Harold S. Ganine once said, "Management manages by making decisions and by seeing that those decisions are implemented," unquote. Implementing a successful EMS involves a number of decisions to be made and follow through to assure that decisions that are made do get implemented. For best results, as many people in the organization as possible become involved in the process. A number of suggested strategies may be deployed, including, but not limited to, individual actions, group actions, organizational actions, and leadership development. Once your EMS program is implemented, there will be a time that the environmental management system will need to look at evaluation, renewal, and extension. Environmental management systems, evaluation, renewal, and extension programs are all key strategic actions for the EMS to succeed. Paul Hawken once said, quote, "Good management is the art of making problems so interesting and their solutions so constructive that everyone, wants to get to work and deal with them, unquote. Once the EMS is fully operational, and some of the results may even begin to be visible, the next phase will be the evaluation, renewal, and extension of the program. No matter how effective the EMS change efforts have been, the culture will need to continually have a reassessment and renewal. It is easy to see that unsuccessful programs need to be evaluated, but sometimes it is not so obvious that successful programs need to be constantly reevaluated and renewed as well. In this phase of the EMS program, it's an opportunity to recognize achievements and celebrate successes, to identify where the program has fallen short of the goals or objectives, and to plan new strategies for success, to evaluate and refine the existing EMS, to strengthen and expand new knowledge and skills that have been developed, to keep the organization focused on results and not just activities, to integrate new people into the process and re-involve longer-term employees, to make sure that the EMS stays open and responsive to improvement, and to extend or expand the EMS program to other areas. It is suggested that the evaluation of the EMS be an annual event, but in no case should it be more than every 3 years before you have your evaluation. The evaluation should include 3 components: performance evaluations, programmatic evaluations, and cultural evaluations. The performance evaluation includes collecting and evaluating the data from actual performance improvements. The performance improvements might include tracking how the EMS has helped in areas such as increasing the use of mass transit programs, the decrease of the use of the automobile, the energy reduction, the water reduction, the reduction in waste to landfill, the reduction in the use of plastics, the increase in the use of organic and/or locally sourced food, the increase in the use of sustainable seafood, the evaluation of the indoor air quality, and evaluations from other certification programs, such as a Clean Marina certification, if applicable. The performance evaluation should also include the net cost savings from the EMS program, and where possible, to break down the savings by all the different performance areas that are measured. The programmatic evaluation includes collecting and evaluating the data from all the EMS-related programs. This might include the number of employees who develop personal sustainability plans, the number of guests who visited educational websites or picked up educational literature, the number of employees participating in support groups, the number of guests who participate in special eco-tours or other educational programs, the number of employees involved in company task forces and the results of the programs offered by these task forces, and the listing of larger or special programs and their participation as well. The cultural evaluation is often referred to as the third leg of the stool, and often the evaluation component most overlooked. Cultural evaluations might include surveys for all employees where they are asked to assess various aspects of the company culture and compare the results against a baseline survey done at the beginning of the EMS process. The surveys can be custom designed to assess the unique situation of each organization. Most will include questions such as how well does the organization do in supporting the following: conserving energy, conserving water, promoting the use of mass transit, using alternatives to the automobile, reducing waste, reducing the use of plastics, increasing the use of organic and/or locally sourced foods, and increasing the use of sustainable seafood. These are samples. There may be other components you wish to measure as well. In order to keep the cultural change process going and strengthen the EMS process, renewal activities are developed. In order for change to be sustained, there needs to be visible events. These events should be under the direction of the management, but the EMS leadership team should be involved in the planning. Activities should be tailored to the needs and interests of a particular group. Some activities might be held for the total organization, while others could be designed for smaller segments. At the beginning of each event, the program director or a member of the EMS leadership team should show how the renewal activities fit into the overall change process. It would be helpful to explain the EMS process and encourage participants to become involved. The following are suggestions of possible renewal type activities. Speakers and/or demonstration series. Speakers could be from within the organization or outside the organization, as well as demonstrations. Movies or audiovisual series, picking up on themes of interest. Brown bag lunches for presentations, discussions, planning. Having walk, bike, or mass transit days. Having an employee competition for energy reduction, waste reduction, plastic reduction, etc. There are many more renewal activities that will come out of the thoughts and creativity of the employees or the EMS team itself. The importance is to make them fun and to make it an opportunity to renew the ongoing efforts of the program. The renewal phase also provides the opportunity to extend or expand the program into other influence areas. There may be other areas of sustainability that the company may want to add to the EMS process. For example, the company's supply chain might be contacted so that they can also play a part in the organization becoming more sustainable. The company may also reach out to the community to form new partnerships for sustainability programs. The company might also reach out to its utility providers to see if there are ways that they might assist in the sustainability goals. The company might also find ways to further extend the efforts to the guests so that they can play a greater role in the sustainability efforts. And in some cases, companies that are successful actually become mentors in the sustainability process for the various groups that the programs are being extended to. Being a mentor is one of the best ways of learning. I'd like to share some final thoughts on the EMS process. An effective EMS evaluation and renewal process helps keep the system open to all in the organization. It thus reduces the fear the program will be taken over by the, quote, experts, unquote, or a small group of people, thus preventing stagnation. Systems that are not open tend to focus more on activities than results. An effective EMS will allow for all to share their ideas and feelings about the program, and at the same time make sure that the tasks to be delivered are completed. An open system prevents the attempts to impose predetermined solutions. It is flexible to adapt to change and to many different kinds of situations and settings. The more that people can get behind the vision of sustainable company, form a community around that vision, and work together to create a positive culture, the more likely the EMS process will succeed. This concludes part 2 of a 3-part presentation. In the next section, we'll look at breakthrough performance skills that you can learn to be a better manager. We'll also look at the concept of ecological management applied to your organization. Finally, we'll look at the role corporate social responsibility has in building a strong organization that reaches out to the community and the world. Thank you.